I am Marcus Reeves, 42 years old. For 12 years, I lived in the shadows as part of a classified military unit that officially didn't exist. Even my wife, Claire, believed I was a military contractor working security details overseas. It was safer that way. For everyone. The hardest part wasn't the missions or the danger it was missing, the slow evolution of my own life. While I was eliminating threats to national security in countries most Americans couldn't find on a map, time kept moving forward at home without me. The last time I saw Claire was during a 72-hour leave 3 years ago. We met at a hotel in Dubai, neutral ground. She looked older, more distant. When I reached for her hand across the table, she hesitated before taking it. By then, we were more like pen pals who occasionally shared a bed than husband and wife. "When are you coming home for good?" she asked, like she always did. "Soon," I answered, like I always did. But this time was different. This time, I meant it. My final mission was complete. The paperwork for my honorable discharge was being processed. In 6 weeks, I would be a civilian again. I didn't tell Claire. I wanted to surprise her. That was my first mistake. When I finally made it back to the States, I called our home number. Disconnected. I drove to our modest 3-bedroom in the suburbs of Virginia. New family living there. Neighbors told me Claire had moved out nearly 2 years ago. No forwarding address. It took me 3 days and some skills the government doesn't know I kept to track her down. The address led me to Westlake Heights, the most exclusive neighborhood in the county. I parked my rental car across from a massive Georgian-style mansion with a circular driveway and manicured hedges. Property records showed it was worth $9.5 million. I watched the house for hours. At 4:18 p.m., a slender woman in a gray uniform emerged from a side entrance, taking out garbage. My wife, in a maid's uniform. The Claire I knew had a master's degree in art history. She worked at a gallery when we met. She wore silk blouses and debated the merits of postmodernism. Now she was hauling trash bags for some millionaire. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. 1,000 questions exploded in my mind, each one darker than the last. What had happened while I was gone? Who was she working for? Was she in trouble? Was this voluntary? Or was someone forcing her? As I watched, a black Bentley pulled into the driveway. A man in his 50s stepped out, tall, distinguished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my annual military salary. He looked toward Claire, said something that made her laugh, then placed his hand on the small of her back as they walked inside together. That casual touch, the familiarity of it, the ownership in it. Something cold and familiar unfurled in my chest. The part of me I thought I'd left behind in those black site interrogation rooms. The part that knew exactly how to dismantle a man joint by joint. They had no idea who was watching from across the street. They had no idea that the man they'd invited into their world specialized in making problems disappear. I was supposed to be retiring from war. Instead, I was about to start a new one. That moment when your world shifts, when what you thought was real suddenly isn't, it leaves you breathless. Suspended between what was and what is. If you've ever had that ground beneath your feet moment of terrible clarity, you know exactly what I mean. Hit the like button if you've ever discovered something that instantly changed how you saw a relationship or a person you trusted. In the comments, tell me about a time when your instincts were screaming that something wasn't right, but you weren't sure what. How did you handle that uncertainty? I didn't approach the house immediately. That's not how I was trained. You don't enter unknown territory without reconnaissance. Without understanding the players, the layout, the potential threats, emotion gets people killed in my line of work. I drove to a hotel, checked in under one of my operational aliases, and began my investigation. I needed to know who owned that mansion before I made my next move. The property was registered to Westlake Enterprises LLC, a shell company that led to another shell company. Classic wealth protection strategy. But everyone leaves digital footprints if you know where to look. 3 hours and several less-than-legal database searches later, I had a name, Edward Harrington, tech entrepreneur, worth over $200 million, divorced twice, no children. I found his picture online. The same man from the Bentley. Next, I searched for any connection between Edward Harrington and Claire. Nothing obvious appeared, but social media revealed fragments. Claire had deleted her personal accounts, but I found her in the background of photos from charity events at the mansion. Always in uniform, always serving, always near Harrington. The dates on the photos showed she'd been working there for at least 18 months. What I couldn't find was any record of communication between us during that period. The emails, the video calls they had, continued regularly until 6 weeks ago, when I told her I was going dark for a final mission. She never mentioned changing jobs, moving, or working as household staff. She had been living a double life, just like me. The next morning, I parked a block away and approached the mansion on foot. The property was surrounded by an ornate iron fence with a security gate. 2 cameras at the entrance, one at each corner of the house I could see. Motion sensors in the garden, good security, but nothing I couldn't handle. I didn't want to break in. Not yet. I needed to observe Claire in her natural environment first. I waited until 10 a.m. when Claire emerged from the house. She walked to a small grocery store 6 blocks away. I followed at a distance, watching her movements. She seemed relaxed, confident, not like someone under duress. She picked up specialty items, imported cheese, a specific brand of sparkling water, fresh-cut flowers, the kind of groceries you buy when you're trying to impress someone. As she walked back to the mansion, I increased my pace, planning to accidentally bump into her near the gates. I needed to see her reaction. Needed to know if she was afraid, if she needed rescuing. Just as I was closing in, Claire stopped abruptly. She set down her grocery bags, pulled out her phone, and made a call. I moved closer, within earshot. "Everything's ready for tonight," she said to whoever was on the other end. "The team has been briefed. Security is in place." A pause. She laughed softly. "Yes, Edward, I know how important this investor is. Trust me, he'll be impressed." She ended the call, picked up her bags, and continued toward the mansion. Her voice had been different, more authoritative, not the voice of a maid reporting to her employer. I changed my approach. Instead of intercepting her, I backed off, found a coffee shop with a view of the mansion's entrance, and continued surveillance. At 2 p.m., delivery trucks began arriving. Catering, florists, alcohol service. The mansion was preparing for an event. Workers streamed in and out, supervised by Claire. She wore the same gray uniform, but her posture, her gestures, they were those of someone in charge, not someone taking orders. This wasn't adding up. At 4:30 p.m., I returned to my hotel room to prepare for infiltration. I needed proper attire for reconnaissance. In my bag was a custom-tailored tuxedo standard equipment for certain types of operations where blending into high society events was necessary. I dressed carefully, adding the finishing touches. Platinum cufflinks with built-in surveillance technology, a tie pin that functioned as a directional microphone. My wedding ring caught my eye as I adjusted my cuffs. I hadn't taken it off once in 12 years, not even during the most dangerous operations. I twisted it thoughtfully, remembering the day Claire had slipped it onto my finger. We had been so young, so optimistic. I tucked a compact 9mm into my concealed holster. Force of habit. I didn't expect to need it, but 12 years of operations had taught me to always have a contingency. By 7 p.m., I was back outside the mansion. Cars had begun arriving, expensive ones. Men in formal wear, women in evening gowns, some kind of fundraiser or private party. I watched from across the street as a valet service handled the incoming vehicles. Security was checking invitations at the door. 2 men, bulky builds, earpieces, private security, not particularly subtle. I approached confidently, adopting the entitled stride of old money. The first rule of infiltration: act like you belong. "Good evening, sir," the security guard said. "May I see your invitation?" I gave him a dismissive glance. Harrington invited me personally. Alexander Wells. I named a tech investor I knew Harrington had done business with, but who was currently in Tokyo, a fact I'd confirmed through social media. The guard checked his tablet. "I don't see a Wells on the list, sir." I sighed with practiced irritation. "Call Edward, then. But he's not going to be pleased about having to vouch for his partner in the Meridian acquisition. The guard hesitated, then touched his earpiece. Sir, I have an Alexander Wells at the gate. Says he's Mr. Harrington's partner in Meridian? He's not on the list. He listened, then nodded. Yes, sir. He turned back to me. Mr. Harrington says to escort you in right away, sir. He's been expecting you. My blood ran cold. Harrington had been expecting Alexander Wells? That was impossible unless... I didn't have time to complete the thought. The guard was already leading me through the front entrance, into the grand foyer, where dozens of guests mingled. Crystal chandeliers, original artwork, marble floors, the unmistakable trappings of extreme wealth. And there, at the center of it all, was Claire. Not in a maid's uniform now, but in an elegant black evening dress. Diamond earrings. Hair swept up elegantly. She was smiling, champagne flute in hand, engaged in conversation with a small group of guests. She looked up as I entered. Our eyes met across the crowded room. No surprise registered on her face, no shock, no confusion. Instead, she smiled a cold, calculating smile I'd never seen before and excused herself from her companions. She moved toward me with deliberate grace, stopping just beyond arm's reach. Marcus, she said calmly, how thoughtful of you to finally accept my invitation. After all these years. Behind her, Edward Harrington appeared, placing a proprietary hand on her shoulder. So, this is the famous husband, he said, extending his other hand to me. Claire has told me so much about you, though she neglected to mention you'd be joining us tonight. I stared at my wife, struggling to process what I was seeing. She wasn't a prisoner. She wasn't in distress. And she had clearly been expecting me. Claire, I managed to say, what the hell is going on? Her smile never wavered. Why don't we discuss this somewhere private? Edward, would you excuse us? I believe my husband and I are overdue for a conversation. Harrington nodded, squeezed her shoulder once more, then disappeared into the crowd. Claire gestured toward a hallway leading deeper into the mansion. Shall we? I've prepared an office for us. I think it's time you learned who you're really married to. She turned and walked away, clearly expecting me to follow. I did, my hand instinctively hovering near my concealed weapon. 12 years of Black Ops had taught me to prepare for every contingency, but nothing had prepared me for this. When the person you thought you knew reveals themselves to be a stranger, it's like the world suddenly shifts on its axis. Everything you believed about your relationship comes into question. Were you blind? Or were you seeing what they wanted you to see? Hit that like button if you've ever discovered someone in your life was wearing a mask. In the comments, share a moment when you realized you didn't know someone as well as you thought. What gave them away? Sometimes it's not what they say, but how they say it. That subtle shift in tone that tells you everything has changed. Claire led me through the mansion's opulent interior to a wood-paneled study at the back of the house. The walls were lined with leather-bound books. A massive desk dominated the space, facing floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked manicured gardens illuminated by strategic landscape lighting. She closed the door behind us, locked it, then walked to a sidebar and poured 2 fingers of whiskey into each of 2 crystal tumblers. She handed one to me. You look like you could use this, she said. I didn't take it. I want answers, Claire. She set my glass down on the desk, sipped from her own. What would you like to know first? Why I'm here? Why I'm not surprised to see you? Or, perhaps, she tilted her head slightly, why I've been pretending to be a maid when I clearly am not. My jaw tightened. Let's start with who you really are. Claire smiled. That's rich. Coming from you. She moved behind the desk, sat down in the high-backed leather chair. Her posture changed subtly more authoritative. I'm exactly who I've always been, Marcus. You're the one who never bothered to look closely. What's your relationship with Harrington? I demanded. Edward is my employer. My actual employer. She opened a drawer, withdrew a business card, slid it across the desk toward me. I picked it up. Claire Reeves, Chief Security Officer, Harrington Global Holdings. I stared at her. You're his head of security? Since when do you know anything about security? Claire laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Since always, Marcus. Since before I met you. The realization hit me like a physical blow. You're an operative. She nodded once. Former CIA, now private sector. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I steadied myself against the desk. Our entire relationship was real, she interrupted. At first. She set her glass down, folded her hands on the desk. I wasn't sent to you, if that's what you're thinking. Our meeting at the gallery opening was genuine. I was between assignments, you were charming. I remembered that night, Claire in a blue dress, passionately explaining the symbolism in a modern sculpture I'd pretended to understand. How beautiful she'd looked, how intelligent, how normal. When did you know? I asked. About what I really did. Second date, she said without hesitation. You have tells, Marcus. Micro-expressions when certain topics come up. The way you scan rooms. The calluses on your hands that don't match your cover story. I recognize them because I have the same ones. I felt like I was drowning. 12 years of marriage, and she had known from the beginning. While I had suspected nothing. If you knew what I was, why continue the relationship? I demanded. Her expression softened slightly. Because I fell in love with you. Against my better judgment. Against protocol. She stood, walked to the window, stared out at the darkness. For a while I thought we could make it work. 2 operatives living civilian covers between missions. But then you started disappearing for longer periods. Your communications became more restricted. I moved to stand beside her, not quite close enough to touch. My assignments required it. I know, she said quietly. But a marriage can't survive on redacted emails and 72-hour rendezvous in hotel rooms. The memory rose unbidden our 10th anniversary, spent in a safe house in Istanbul. Claire had prepared a small cake. I'd been distracted, reviewing mission parameters for the following day. We'd made love later, but it had felt mechanical, perfunctory. In the morning, I'd left before she woke. When did you start working for Harrington? I asked. 4 years ago, after Bogota. Bogota, the mission that had gone sideways. 3 agents lost. I'd been wounded. Spent 6 weeks recovering in a classified medical facility. No contact with the outside world. You disappeared, Claire continued. No word for nearly 2 months. I thought you were dead. They wouldn't let me. I know how it works, Marcus. She cut me off. I lived under the same restrictions. The difference is, I began to question them. She turned to face me. Edward approached me at a time when I was vulnerable. Offered me a position with autonomy, without the bureaucracy of government work. A chance to use my skills while living something closer to a normal life. And the maid uniform? I asked, still struggling to reconcile the woman before me with the images I'd seen. Protective coloration, she explained. Edward has legitimate security concerns. Industrial espionage, kidnapping threats. I oversee his protective detail, but we found it useful to have me sometimes appear as staff. People speak freely in front of the help. They reveal things. The tactical logic was sound. I would have done the same. Why didn't you tell me when I contacted you after Bogota? Why continue the charade? Claire's expression hardened. Because you never gave me the truth, Marcus. Not once in our marriage. You expected me to wait patiently for crumbs of your time, to accept whatever sanitized version of your life you were permitted to share, while keeping me in a comfortable little box labeled civilian wife. She stepped closer, eyes flashing. Did it ever occur to you that I might be more than that? That I might understand your world better than anyone? The accusation stung because it was true. I had compartmentalized Claire, kept her separate from my operational life, protected her from it. Or so I'd thought. I'm coming home now, I said. For good. My discharge is processed. She finished for me. I know. I have contacts too. I stared at her. So all this... I gestured between us. What is it? Are we even still married? Claire sighed, suddenly looking tired. Legally, yes. Emotionally? I don't know, Marcus. We've been living separate lives for years. And Harrington? Are you and he? Her eyes narrowed. Is that really what you think of me? Before I could answer, a sharp knock came at the door. Claire straightened, instantly alert. Miss Reeves, a man's voice called. We have a situation. Claire moved to the door, unlocked it. One of the security guards I'd seen at the entrance stood there, looking tense. What is it, James? Two unidentified vehicles just entered the property through the service entrance. No clearance, no identification. Claire's demeanor shifted instantly into operational mode. Lock down the main house. Move Mr. Harrington to secure room 3. Alert the team. The guard nodded and hurried away. Claire turned back to me. All business now. Stay here, she ordered. Like hell, I responded, reaching beneath my jacket for my weapon. Our eyes met, and for the first time that night, I saw a flash of the Claire. I remembered my partner, my equal. She nodded once, accepting my assistance without further discussion. The service entrance is on the east side, she said, moving to the desk and pressing what looked like a decorative element on its surface. A hidden panel in the bookcase slid open, revealing a rack of weapons and tactical gear. She selected a compact Glock, checked it with practiced efficiency. Whoever they are, she continued, they chose tonight deliberately. The fundraiser provides cover, creates confusion. Target? I asked, slipping automatically into operational shorthand. Most likely Edward. He's closing a major acquisition. Not everyone's happy about it. She tossed me an earpiece, which I inserted automatically. Channel 3, she said, my team's frequency. As I adjusted the earpiece, a question surfaced through the tactical focus that had taken over. Claire, why the theatrics earlier? If you knew I was coming, why the whole scene in the foyer? She paused, hand on the doorknob. Because I needed to see your face when you realized the truth. I needed to know if there was anything left between us worth salvaging. And? I asked, suddenly fearing her answer more than whatever threat waited outside. Claire's expression softened momentarily. I'm still deciding. Then she was gone, moving silently down the hallway, weapon at her side but concealed from the guests. I followed, my training taking over, pushing the emotional chaos aside. Whatever was happening between Claire and me would have to wait. Right now, there was a threat to neutralize, and despite everything, the lies, the revelations, the years of deception, we were still operatives. And for operatives, the mission always comes first. But as I moved through the mansion behind my wife, watching her communicate silently with her security team, seeing her in her element for the first time, one thought kept circling in my mind. I had spent 12 years protecting my country from threats abroad, only to come home and find that the greatest threat to my marriage had been my own blindness, and I had no tactical training for how to fix that. There's something uniquely painful about realizing someone saw all of you, while you only saw parts of them. We build relationships on what we think is mutual understanding, only to discover we've been playing different games entirely. Hit that like button if you've ever had that sinking feeling of realizing someone understood you better than you understood them. In the comments, tell me about a time when you discovered hidden depths in someone close to you. Were you impressed? Threatened? A little of both? Sometimes the most jarring revelations aren't about betrayal, but about realizing how much we've underestimated someone we claim to love. Claire and I moved efficiently through the mansion, her in a flowing evening gown that somehow didn't impede her movement, me in my tuxedo with a concealed weapon, a matched pair of operators hiding in plain sight. The party continued around us, oblivious guests laughing and chatting while security quietly reinforced positions at all entrances. Through the earpiece, I heard Claire's team reporting positions. Professional, disciplined. She had trained them well. East perimeter breached, a male voice reported. 2 subjects neutralized, but 4 more entered the grounds, heading toward the main house. Roger, Claire responded, her voice calm but commanding. Johnson, Kepler, intercept at the greenhouse. Marquez, ensure the VIPs remain in the ballroom. Marcus and I will cover the eastern corridor. She glanced at me. You good with that assignment? Roger that, I replied automatically, falling into familiar patterns despite the surreal situation. We positioned ourselves at the junction of two hallways that led from the service areas into the main house. Perfect choke point. I took the left angle, Claire the right, both of us partially concealed by decorative columns. Bogies approaching? 30 seconds, the earpiece announced. Claire looked at me. Non-lethal if possible. We need intelligence. I nodded. She still remembered my preference for taking prisoners rather than bodies. One of many things we'd apparently discussed during our marriage that I'd never realized was professional rather than hypothetical. The first intruder appeared black tactical gear, face covered, moving with military precision, not amateurs. I waited until he passed my position, then struck a quick blow to the carotid artery, another to the back of the knee. He went down silently. I secured his weapons, zip-tied his hands. Basic operator protocol. Two more approached from Claire's side. She moved like water fluid, graceful, but devastatingly effective. The first intruder went down before he registered her presence. The second managed to raise his weapon before Claire executed a perfect disarming technique followed by an elbow strike that left him unconscious. It was beautiful to watch, like a dance we'd rehearsed but never performed together. 3 neutralized, Claire reported into her comm. Eastern corridor secure. 2 more on the west lawn, came the response. Armed and moving fast. Claire caught my eye. Johnson needs backup. West lawn, now. We moved together through the house, using service corridors to avoid the guests. As we ran, I processed what I was seeing Claire in her operational element. Confident, commanding. Nothing like the art gallery curator I'd married. Nothing like the patient wife who waited for my brief returns home. This Claire was magnificent and a complete stranger to me. We emerged onto the west lawn just as Claire's security team engaged the remaining intruders. Gunfire erupted, suppressed weapons but still audible. Guests would notice soon. The situation was escalating. One of Claire's men went down, clutching his leg. An intruder took aim at his head for a kill shot. I didn't hesitate. 3 rounds, center mass. The threat dropped. Claire had simultaneously eliminated the final intruder with similar efficiency. Our eyes met over the bodies. For a moment, we were simply 2 operators who had successfully neutralized a threat. Professionals who understood each other perfectly. Then, reality crashed back in. Status report, Claire demanded into her comm. All threats neutralized, came the response. 1 of ours wounded, non-critical. Police have been alerted with the prearranged cover story. Claire nodded. Get the wounded to the secure medical room. Process the captives in the holding area. Full debrief in 30 minutes. She turned to me. We need to get back inside before we're missed. We slipped back into the mansion, stopping in a small bathroom to check for blood spatter or other evidence of the confrontation. Claire expertly fixed her hair while I straightened my tuxedo. You handled that well, she said, her eyes meeting mine in the mirror. So did you. An awkward silence fell between us 2 people who had just fought side by side with perfect coordination, now struggling to find words. We should get back to the party, Claire finally said. Edward will be concerned. About the intruders or about me? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Claire turned to face me directly. Marcus, Edward is my employer, nothing more. You seem very comfortable in his home. I've made a life here, she said simply. While you were gone, the words hit harder than any physical blow. We should talk about that, I said. About us. What happens now? Claire checked her appearance one final time. Yes, we should, but not tonight. Tonight we have a situation to manage, a cover to maintain. She reached for the door, then paused. When this is over, come to the guest house. That's where I actually live, not in the main house. She left before I could respond, slipping back into the role of elegant party hostess as effortlessly as she had shifted into tactical commander minutes earlier. I rejoined the party as well, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter, observing the room with new eyes. What I had initially seen as a gathering of wealthy elites now revealed itself as a carefully orchestrated security operation. The waitstaff, all with the subtle tells of trained personnel. The guests, strategically positioned near exits and key figures. The entire event, a sophisticated protective bubble around Edward Harrington, my wife's creation. Harrington himself reappeared, moving confidently through the crowd, as if there hadn't just been an armed incursion on his property. He spotted me, approached with a friendly smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Reeves," he said pleasantly, "I hope you're enjoying the evening." Claire seemed quite surprised by your arrival. His tone suggested he knew otherwise. "Claire has always been good at managing surprises," I replied. Harrington studied me for a moment. "She's an exceptional woman. The best security consultant I've ever employed." He sipped his champagne. "Though I'm sure I don't need to tell you how capable she is." "Actually," I said, "you do. It seems there's quite a lot about my wife I'm just discovering." Something flickered in Harrington's eyes. Satisfaction? Amusement? "Interesting," he murmured. "She said you were observant." Before I could respond, Claire appeared at Harrington's side. "The situation has been contained," she informed him quietly. "Full security sweep complete. No remaining threats identified." "Excellent work as always, Claire," Harrington replied. Then, to both of us, "I should return to my guests. I'm sure you two have much to discuss." He nodded to me. "Mr. Reeves, welcome home." As he walked away, Claire turned to me. "The debrief will take about an hour. After that, we can talk properly." She pressed a small key into my palm. "Guest house is at the back of the property. Make yourself comfortable." Then, she was gone again, moving purposefully through the crowd, stopping occasionally to exchange pleasantries with guests while simultaneously directing her security team through her earpiece. I watched her for a few minutes, this woman who wore my ring, but whose life I barely understood. Then I slipped away from the party, made my way across the moonlit grounds to the guest house, a modest structure that was still larger than any home Claire and I had shared during our marriage. Inside, I found a stylish, comfortable space that finally showed signs of the Claire I knew or thought I knew. Art books stacked on coffee tables. A painting similar to one we'd bought together on our honeymoon. Photographs. I picked one up. Us on our wedding day. Claire radiant in white, me in my dress uniform, both smiling as if the future held nothing but promise. Another photo caught my eye. Claire receiving some kind of award, shaking hands with a man I recognized as the director of the CIA's Special Activities Division. The photo was dated 6 years ago, during a period when she was supposedly running an art gallery in Virginia. How had I missed this? How had I failed to see what was right in front of me? The answer was simple and damning. I hadn't been looking. I'd been so focused on my missions, my operational security, my compartmentalized life, that I'd never questioned whether Claire might be living a similar existence. I'd underestimated her, categorized her, limited her to the role I'd assigned her in my life story. On a desk in the corner sat a laptop. Beside it, a framed quote. "The most dangerous place is where they don't expect you to be." I sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. Not from the brief combat, but from the realization that the foundation of my life, my understanding of my marriage, my wife, my future, had just been revealed as a carefully constructed fiction. Or perhaps not a fiction, perhaps just a story with chapters I'd never bothered to read. I thought about the years I'd spent in shadows, the lives I'd taken, the operations I'd executed flawlessly. I'd been one of the best at what I did, precisely because I noticed what others missed. I found patterns where others saw chaos. Yet I had missed the most important pattern of all, the one right in my own home. As I waited for Claire to finish her debrief, I confronted the hardest truth of all. Coming home didn't mean what I thought it would. Because the home I remembered, the wife I thought was waiting, the life I had planned to return to, none of it existed. If Claire and I had any future together, it would have to be built on new foundations, with both of us finally seeing each other clearly. The question was whether either of us wanted that enough to try. Sometimes the hardest person to truly see is the one right in front of us. We create versions of people in our minds, simplified, manageable versions that fit our expectations. Then we're shocked when they step outside those boundaries we never told them about. Hit that like button if you've ever realized you've been underestimating someone important in your life. In the comments, I want to know. Have you ever discovered hidden talents or capabilities in your partner that surprised you? How did it change your relationship when you realized they were more than the role you'd assigned them? It was nearly 2 a.m. when Claire finally returned to the guest house. She'd changed out of her evening gown into black tactical pants and a fitted t-shirt practical clothes for the debrief I assumed she'd just completed. She looked tired but alert, the way operatives learn to function on minimal rest during extended missions. She found me in the living room, still in my tuxedo, minus the jacket and tie, nursing a glass of her expensive bourbon. "Help yourself," she said dryly, nodding toward the bottle. "Old habits," I replied. "Occupational hazard." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "I remember. You used to inventory the liquor cabinet after each deployment, check for dust patterns on the furniture." As if I wouldn't notice. She moved to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, drank it down in one long swallow. The gesture was so familiar. Claire always hydrated meticulously after operations, that for a moment it was like stepping back in time to when things made sense between us. "The intruders," I said, redirecting to safer, tactical ground. "Who sent them?" Claire leaned against the kitchen counter. "Competing firm. Edwards' acquisition target is developing quantum encryption technology that would make their entire product line obsolete. They're desperate." "Corporate espionage with military tactics," I observed. "The line between private sector and black ops gets thinner every year." "That's why Edward hired me," Claire said. "He needed someone who understood both worlds." She studied me for a moment. "You did good work tonight. My team was impressed." High praise coming from Claire Reeves, Chief Security Officer. The words came out more bitter than I had intended. Claire sighed, pushed away from the counter, and came to sit in the chair opposite me. "I don't know what you want me to say, Marcus. That I'm sorry for building a life while you were gone? For using my skills instead of waiting by the phone?" "I want you to tell me why you lied," I said. "All those video calls, those emails. You told me about gallery showings, book clubs, visits with your sister. None of it was real." Claire's expression hardened. "And you told me you were providing security for construction projects in Dubai, that you were training local forces in Jordan, that your sunburn came from supervising a building site, not from lying in wait for 3 days in the desert to eliminate a target." She leaned forward. "We both lied, Marcus. The difference is I knew you were lying. I accepted it as part of who you were, part of the life you'd chosen." "You never even considered I might be more than what you saw." The truth of her words stung. "Why didn't you tell me when you joined the agency? When you took this job with Harrington? Why maintain the deception?" Claire was silent for a long moment. "At first, it was protocol. You know how it works, operational security. Need to know. By the time I had the clearance to tell you, our marriage had become episodic. Occasional weekends, holiday rendezvous. It didn't seem worth disrupting the pattern." "Not worth it," I repeated, the words tasting like ash. "Our entire relationship wasn't worth the truth." "Was it worth it to you?" she countered. "All those times you could have requested less dangerous assignments, positions that would have allowed you to come home more often. Did you ever even consider it?" I hadn't. Not seriously. The work had become who I was. "That's what I thought," Claire said, reading my expression. "We both chose our paths, Marcus. I just adapted to yours better than you adapted to mine." She stood, moved to a cabinet, pulled out a file folder. "Here's what you really want to know, isn't it? My full service record, my qualifications, the operations I was running while you thought I was arranging gallery exhibitions." She tossed the folder onto the coffee table between us. "Classified material that she shouldn't have had access to outside secure facilities. That she definitely shouldn't be showing me now that I was officially discharged." I didn't open it. "I don't need to see your resume, Claire." "Don't you?" Her voice was challenging. "Isn't that what's really bothering you? Not that I lied, but that I might be as good at this as you are. That while you were playing the hero overseas, I was running my own operations. That you can't fit me into that box labeled civilian wife anymore." I stood, suddenly angry. "You think that's what this is about? My ego? Finding out my wife can handle herself in combat? Isn't it?" she demanded. "No," I said forcefully. It's about trust, Claire. It's about coming home to discover that our entire relationship was a cover story. That the woman I've loved for 12 years doesn't actually exist. I exist, she said quietly. I'm standing right here. The real question is whether you ever saw me at all. The anger drained out of me as quickly as it had come. She was right. I had loved the Claire. I thought I knew the art curator, with the quick laugh and passionate opinions about abstract expressionism. The woman who sent care packages with homemade cookies that arrived at forward operating bases, somehow still intact. The safe harbor I imagined waiting for me when the mission was finally over. Had any of that been real? I don't know where we go from here, I admitted. Claire's expression softened slightly. Neither do I. She glanced at her watch. But right now, we need to focus on more immediate concerns. The men we captured tonight are part of a larger operation. Based on their equipment and tactics, they'll have a second team, a contingency plan. Just like that, we were back on operational footing. The personnel would have to wait. Again, you think they'll make another attempt? I asked. I know they will, Claire said. These aren't amateurs. They've been planning this for weeks. She moved to a wall panel, pressed something that caused it to slide back, revealing a small tactical operations center, computers, communications equipment, surveillance feeds. Professional. Hidden. Just like its operator. The quantum encryption prototype is being transported to Edward's secure facility tomorrow, Claire continued, bringing up schematics on a monitor. The attack tonight was meant to extract the transport details. Since that failed, they'll target the transport itself. I studied the route displayed on the screen. Heavy exposure here. I pointed to an interchange. And here, where the road narrows. Perfect ambush points. Claire nodded. Exactly what I told Edward. He insisted on ground transport instead of air, worried about the prototype's sensitivity to altitude changes. I analyzed the tactical situation automatically, my training taking over. You'll need a decoy transport. Multiple vehicles, identical appearance. Aerial support if you can get it. Already arranged, Claire said. But I'm still short on ground team personnel after tonight. 2 of my best operators are out of commission. She didn't ask directly, but the question was implicit in her gaze. Would I help? Despite everything, the lies, the revelations, the uncertain future of our relationship, the answer was obvious. This was who we were. What we did. And whatever happened between us personally, I wouldn't leave her team undermanned for a high-risk operation. Brief me on the details, I said. Claire's relief was visible, but controlled. Thank you. For the next 2 hours, we worked side by side, reviewing intelligence, adjusting tactical plans, preparing contingencies. It was the most honest interaction we'd had in years. 2 professionals with complementary skills focused on a shared objective. As dawn approached, Claire pulled up personnel files on the remaining members of the hostile team based on intelligence extracted from the captured operatives. The operation lead is this man, she said, displaying a photo. Nikolai Resnik, ex-Spetsnaz, now private military contractor. Specializes in high-value acquisitions for corporate clients. I stared at the face on the screen, recognition flooding through me. I know him. Claire looked at me sharply. How? Operation Blackstone, 2018. Kazakhstan. He was running security for a warlord we were targeting. His team was formidable. You engaged them directly? I nodded. It got complicated, messy. 3 of my team didn't make it out. Understanding dawned in Claire's eyes. And Resnik? Did he see you? Yes, I admitted. We were face-to-face briefly before extraction. If he's running this operation and sees me protecting the transport, it becomes personal, Claire finished. He'll divert resources to target you specifically, which could work to our advantage, I pointed out. Use me as a focus for his attention. Draw him away from the primary objective. Claire was already shaking her head. Too risky. He'll be expecting that play. Not if we make it look unintentional, I argued. Like I'm trying to stay hidden but slip up. She considered it. The tactical implications. Playing across her face. It could work. but I don't like putting you in that position. 1. 1. It's what I'm trained for, Claire. What we're both trained for. A silent communication passed between us, the unspoken understanding of two operators weighing acceptable risk against mission objectives. It felt more intimate than any conversation we'd had in years. All right, she finally agreed. But we modify the plan. I want multiple extraction options, emergency medical on standby, and a direct line to you at all times. I nodded. Agreed. We spent another hour refining the approach, integrating my role into the existing security plan. When we finally finished, the sun was rising, casting long shadows across the guest house floor. Claire stretched, fatigue momentarily visible before she controlled it. We should get some rest. Transport leaves at 1,400 hours. I stood, suddenly aware that we hadn't resolved any of the personal questions between us. Where would I sleep? Were we still a couple? Was there any future for the marriage that existed on paper but seemed to have little relation to our actual lives? Claire sensed my uncertainty. There's a guest room down the hall, she said quietly. Or, she left the alternative unspoken, but I understood. Despite everything, there was still a connection between us. Different from what I'd imagined, but perhaps stronger in its way. Built on shared experience rather than the comfortable fiction I'd constructed. I'll take the guest room, I said. We should focus on the operation. The rest, we can figure out after. Claire nodded, something like disappointment flickering in her eyes before her professional mask returned. Tactical gear is in the closet. Help yourself to whatever fits. Briefing with the full team at 1,100 hours. She turned to go, then stopped, looked back at me. Marcus, thank you. For understanding, for helping. Not everyone would, under the circumstances. I managed a small smile. Not everyone is married to a secret operative. No, she agreed. Just the lucky ones. As she disappeared down the hallway toward her bedroom, I was left with the strangest feeling that I was finally seeing my wife clearly for the first time. Not as the patient, supportive figure I'd imagined waiting for my return, but as a complete person with her own mission, her own purpose. And despite everything, I found myself respecting her more, not less. Tomorrow we would face Resnick together, a dangerous enemy with a personal grudge. The operation would be high risk, with multiple variables beyond our control. But the greatest unknown wasn't whether we would succeed tactically. It was whether Claire and I, having finally revealed our true selves to each other, could find a way forward together. Or if some deceptions, even well-intentioned ones, created wounds too deep to heal. Engagement Prompt 5. There's something powerfully intimate about working alongside someone who truly understands your capabilities, who sees your strengths and adapts to them rather than questioning them. Sometimes we connect more honestly through shared purpose than through words. Hit that like button if you've ever experienced that rare synchronicity with someone, that moment when you're operating on the same wavelength without having to explain yourself. In the comments, tell me about a time when action spoke louder than words in one of your relationships. When did doing something together reveal more truth than talking ever could? At precisely 1,400 hours, the transport operation commenced. 3 identical armored vehicles departed Harrington's estate at 30-second intervals, each taking a different route to the secure facility 40 miles away. I was in the second vehicle, not with the actual prototype, but positioned to draw attention if Resnick's team was watching. Claire had assigned herself to the lead vehicle, the one actually carrying the prototype. I'd argued against it, but she'd shut me down with a look that communicated clearly. Her operation, her risk to take. Crow's Nest to all units. Perimeter is clear. You are green for departure, came the voice of Claire's surveillance coordinator through our tactical comms. I sat in the passenger seat of our SUV, dressed in the tactical gear Claire had provided: black BDUs, ballistic vest, communication equipment identical to a regular team's. The driver, a former Army Ranger named Diaz, kept his eyes on the road, maintaining exactly the speed limit. Eagle 2 en route, he reported calmly. Estimated arrival 1,442. Through my earpiece, I heard the other teams check in. Claire's voice was crisp and professional. Eagle 1, proceeding as planned. No tails observed. The first 15 minutes passed without incident. We followed our designated route, maintaining security protocols, watching for surveillance. Standard transport procedure. Too standard. Something's off, I said to Diaz. This is too easy. He glanced at me. Maybe they backed off after last night. I shook my head. Not Resnick. He doesn't abort operations. He adapts. I keyed my comm. Eagle 1, this is Eagle 2. Be advised. Lack of opposition suggests alternative strategy. Recommend heightened alert. Claire's voice came back immediately. Acknowledged, Eagle 2. We're scanning for electronic surveillance, possible remote intervention. As if on cue, our vehicle's engine stuttered, then surged forward. What the hell? Diaz fought with the steering wheel as the SUV accelerated without his input. They've hacked the system, I realized. The vehicles are being controlled remotely. Over the comm, I heard similar reports from the other teams. All 3 transport vehicles were being hijacked electronically. Crow's Nest. We've lost control of the vehicles, Claire reported. Implement countermeasures. Working on it, came the harried response. Their intrusion is sophisticated, bypassing all fail-safes. Our SUV veered sharply right at the next intersection, deviating from the planned route. I glanced at the navigation system, recognizing where we were being directed. They're funneling us toward the industrial district, I told Diaz. Perfect kill zone. Minimal civilian presence. Multiple attack vectors. Limited escape routes. Diaz abandoned the steering wheel, which was now moving on its own, and drew his sidearm. Orders? I considered our options. If we bailed out now, we'd alert Resnick that this wasn't the primary transport. If we stayed with the vehicle, we were headed into a trap. But perhaps that was exactly what we needed. Stay with it, I decided. Let them think their plan is working. Alert Eagle 3 to continue to the secure facility with all possible speed. They may not realize we split the package. In the operation briefing, Claire had revealed that the actual prototype had been divided into 3 components, each transported separately. A final countermeasure in case of exactly this scenario. Diaz relayed the message while I prepared for what was coming. The industrial district loomed ahead, abandoned warehouses, empty loading docks, perfect cover for an ambush team. Eagle 1, what's your status? I asked, needing to know if Claire was facing the same trap. Also being rerouted, she responded. ETA to the industrial zone 3 minutes. Eagle 3 reports the same. They're bringing all 3 vehicles together. They want to be efficient, I said. Take all 3 targets at once. Sort out which has the prototype afterward. Or they know it's been split and need all 3 components, Claire countered. Either way, we were driving straight into Resnick's carefully laid trap. But forewarned is forearmed. Eagle 1, Eagle 3, prepare for immediate hostile contact, I advised. Recommend disabling our own vehicles on approach. Deny them the ability to move us further into the kill zone. Agreed, Claire said. Diaz, Jackson, on my mark. Emergency shutdown protocol. 3, 2, 1, execute. Diaz reached beneath the dashboard and yanked hard on a concealed cable, the manual override that physically disconnected the transmission. Our SUV jerked violently, then ground to a halt about 200 yards from the entrance to the industrial zone. Through the windshield, I could see the other 2 vehicles also stopping. We were still vulnerable, but at least we weren't being delivered deeper into the enemy's territory. Defensive positions, Claire ordered over the comm. Protect the packages at all costs. I exited the vehicle on the right side, using the armored door as cover, scanning the surrounding area for threats. The industrial zone was eerily quiet. No civilian traffic, no workers visible. Too quiet. Drone, Diaz said suddenly, pointing upward. Sure enough, a small quadcopter was hovering about 50 feet above us. Surveillance. They're assessing our positions, I said, preparing to engage. Almost immediately, the attack began. Precise sniper fire targeted the engines of all 3 vehicles, ensuring they couldn't be restarted. Then smoke grenades landed near our positions, obscuring visibility. Standard tactics. Block escape routes. Create confusion, then close in for capture. I knew Resnick would be watching, directing the operation from a safe distance until he confirmed my presence. I needed to draw him out. I deliberately exposed myself for half a second longer than necessary while moving to better cover, just enough time for the surveillance drone to get a clear image of my face. Multiple hostiles approaching from the north and east, Claire reported. At least 8 operators. Tactical formation. I keyed my comm. Eagle 1, I'm moving to your position. It was a calculated risk leaving my assigned post to join Claire, but it would further convince Resnick that something valuable was in her vehicle. I made my way through the smoke, staying low, using the abandoned equipment and debris as cover. I could hear sporadic gunfire as Claire's team engaged the approaching hostiles. When I reached Claire's position behind her disabled SUV, she gave me a look that communicated both approval of the tactical decision and concern about the personal risk. Resnick's men? She asked. I nodded. Same equipment, same tactics as Kazakhstan. It's his team. Has he spotted you? By now? Almost certainly. As if to confirm my assessment, the pattern of the attack suddenly shifted. Most of the hostile force continued to press toward the third vehicle, but a smaller team broke off, moving with clear purpose toward our position. They're splitting their focus, Claire observed. He's coming for me, I said, using the prototype as secondary objective now. This just got personal. Claire processed this. We can use that. Let him think you're guarding this component. She reached into the vehicle, extracted a metal case. This is a decoy. The real component is with Eagle 3, a clever contingency I hadn't been briefed on. Claire had anticipated everything, including the possibility of a compromised team member. What's the play? I asked, deferring to her operational command. Draw them away from Eagle 3, she decided. Give them time to reach the extraction point. Helicopter is already en route. I checked my weapon. I'll take the decoy. Make it convincing. Claire hesitated. Marcus, I've dealt with Resnick before, I reminded her. I know how he thinks. She studied me for a moment, then handed over the case. Extraction point is the roof of the processing facility, east side. If you're not there in 15 minutes, we leave without you. I knew she didn't mean it. Not entirely, but it was the right call tactically. Understood, I said. See you in 14 minutes. Before she could respond, I was moving. The decoy case clutched in one hand, weapon in the other. I made sure to stay just visible enough for Resnick's surveillance to track me as I headed toward the main warehouse building. Behind me, I heard the firefight intensify as Claire directed her team to provide covering fire. She'd always been good at reading my intentions, anticipating my moves. Even now, with years of secrets between us, that operational synchronicity remained. I entered the warehouse through a side door, immediately assessing the space. High ceilings, catwalks above, abandoned machinery creating a maze of potential cover and ambush points. Perfect for what I needed. I keyed my comm one last time. Eagle 1, I'm inside the main structure. Hostiles are following. Eagle 3 status? Proceeding to extraction, Claire reported. ETA, 7 minutes. Copy that. I switched off my comm then, not wanting to risk Resnick's team intercepting our communications. From this point on, I was on my own. I moved deeper into the warehouse, purposely leaving subtle signs of my passage, a scuff mark here, a displaced dust pattern there. Signs that would be obvious to trained operators like Resnick's team. I needed them to follow me, to commit fully to the pursuit. I had just reached the central area of the warehouse when I heard them enter multiple operators moving with tactical precision, spreading out to secure the space. Find him. A voice ordered in accented English. Resnick. I smiled grimly. The bait had worked. Now for the trap. I placed the decoy case visibly on a platform, then retreated to a concealed position with good sightlines. The classic false surrender technique, appear to abandon the objective in panic, then ambush the enemy when they move to claim it. Resnick was too experienced to fall for it directly, but he would recognize the play. He would expect me to be watching the case, waiting for his men to approach. What he wouldn't expect was that the case itself was the real trap. When I'd placed it down, I'd activated a concealed mechanism Claire had built into the decoy, a non-lethal but highly effective flashbang device that would trigger when the case was moved. I heard Resnick's men communicating as they advanced, clearing sectors methodically. Professional. Thorough. Just as I remembered from Kazakhstan. Then Resnick himself emerged onto the warehouse floor. Older now, with more gray in his beard, but still moving with the predatory grace that had made him so dangerous. He scanned the space, eyes eventually finding the case I'd left exposed. "Too easy," he said aloud. "You're getting sloppy, American." I remained silent, watching, waiting. Resnick gestured to his men. "Secure the perimeter. He's still here, watching." Then raising his voice. "I remember you from Kazakhstan. You cost me 3 good men." "I've been hoping our paths would cross again." He was trying to provoke a response, get me to reveal my position. I didn't take the bait. Resnick approached the case slowly, circling it, examining it from all angles, looking for the trap he knew must be there. Smart, but not smart enough. The trigger mechanism wasn't on the outside of the case. It was pressure sensitive, activated only when the weight of the case changed. Resnick finally reached for it, his curiosity overcoming caution. The moment he lifted the case, the device triggered a blinding flash of light, combined with a disorienting sonic pulse designed to temporarily incapacitate without causing permanent damage. I was ready, eyes shielded, ears protected. Resnick's team wasn't. In the chaos that followed, I moved, taking down 2 of Resnick's disoriented operators before they could recover, then engaging a third in close quarters combat. These weren't untrained guards. They recovered quickly despite the sensory assault. Resnick himself had dropped the case but managed to retain some awareness. He drew his sidearm, firing in my general direction, still half-blinded but dangerous nonetheless. I took cover behind a concrete pillar, calculating my next move. The extraction window was closing. I needed to end this quickly. Resnick's vision was clearing. He spotted me, adjusted his aim. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" he called out. "That I wouldn't recognize standard tactics?" "No," I replied, speaking for the first time. "I counted on you recognizing them." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "The prototype, it's not here." "It never was." Fury contorted his features. "Do you know what my employer will do when I fail to deliver? The penalty for this failure?" "I know exactly what they'll do," I said. "The same thing my employers did when operations went sideways. They'll disavow you, pretend you never existed, leave you to take the fall, like your government did to you," Resnick countered. "Why else would a top operative be working private security for a tech billionaire?" His words hit closer to home than he knew. Not for me, my discharge had been honorable, my transition planned, but for Claire. Had she chosen Harrington's employment for the same reasons Resnick had chosen his? Because the agencies we served so faithfully would abandon us in a heartbeat if it served their interests? The moment of reflection cost me. Resnick lunged forward, closing the distance between us with surprising speed for a man his age. We collided, his weight driving me backward into a metal shelving unit. The fight that followed was brutal, efficient. 2 experienced operators with no wasted movement, no hesitation. Resnick was strong, his technique honed by decades of combat, but I had youth on my side, and more importantly, something to return to if I survived. Claire, the thought of her gave me the edge I needed. I broke Resnick's hold, countered with a strike to his throat that sent him staggering backward. Before he could recover, I had my weapon trained on his center mass. Resnick froze, recognizing the checkmate position. His own weapon lay several feet away, knocked aside during our struggle. "Finish it," he said, straightening his posture with dignity. "As I would in your position." I kept my aim steady. "That's the difference between us, Resnick. I don't kill when there's a choice." Confusion crossed his face. "There's always a choice. You made yours in Kazakhstan." "That was then," I said. "I'm not that operator anymore." Before he could respond, the distant sound of helicopter rotors reached us. The extraction team, right on schedule. "Your ride is here," Resnick observed with grim humor. "What now, American? You can't take me with you. And if you leave me, I'll come after you again. After your wife." My finger tightened on the trigger involuntarily at the mention of Claire. Resnick saw it, smiled. "Yes, I know who she is.
Did you think your marriage records were classified? That I wouldn't do my research before this operation?
He was baiting me, trying to provoke an emotional response that would end with one of us dead. The old me would have obliged him. The operator who executed missions with cold precision wouldn't have hesitated. But standing there, I realized I didn't want to be that person anymore. Didn't want to bring that version of myself back to Claire, if there was any hope for us. You're right about one thing, I told Resnick. I can't take you with me. His expression became resigned. He straightened, preparing to meet death with dignity. Instead, I lowered my weapon slightly and fired one shot to his thigh, incapacitating, but not lethal. Resnick cried out, collapsing to one knee, looking up at me with genuine surprise. The authorities will be here in 10 minutes, I said, backing toward the exit. Your employer might still extract you if you're valuable enough, or they might leave you to take the fall. Either way, you'll live to make that choice. You're making a mistake, Resnick growled through clenched teeth. Mercy is weakness in our profession. I paused at the door. Maybe. But it's a weakness I can live with. I left him there, bleeding but alive, and made my way to the extraction point on the roof. The helicopter was hovering, ready for immediate departure. I could see Claire in the open door, scanning for me, weapon ready to provide covering fire if needed. When she spotted me, something changed in her posture relief, I thought. Or maybe just professional satisfaction that the mission was proceeding as planned. I sprinted across the open roof, bullets from Resnick's remaining team kicking up concrete around me. Claire leaned out, extended her hand. I grasped it, felt her strength as she helped pull me into the aircraft. The helicopter banked sharply, gaining altitude and distance. Claire secured the door, then turned to me. Resnick? She asked. Alive, I said, but no longer a threat for the immediate future. She studied me for a moment. You had the shot. Why didn't you take it? It was a professional question, but it contained a personal one as well. Had I gone soft? Was I still the operator she'd married? The one who completed missions regardless of the cost? The objective was the prototype, I said. Neutralizing Resnick wasn't necessary to accomplish that goal. Claire nodded, accepting the explanation at face value. But I knew she understood the deeper meaning. The old Marcus would have eliminated the threat permanently. The man sitting beside her now had made a different choice. As the helicopter carried us back toward Harrington's estate, I realized that the most important engagement of the day hadn't been with Resnick. It had been with myself confronting the operator I had been, deciding what kind of man I wanted to be now. The question was whether that man still had a place in Claire's life, whether two people who had spent years hiding behind operational facades could build something real now that the masks had fallen away. I looked at Claire, sitting across from me in the helicopter, already debriefing her team via comms. Professional, competent, beautiful. A stranger I had been married to for 12 years. When this mission was fully complete, when we were alone again, we would need to decide if our marriage had been just another long-term cover operation, or if, beneath all the deception, there was still something worth fighting for. They say you never truly know someone until you see them under pressure, until you watch them make the hard choices when everything is on the line. Sometimes, it's not what they do that reveals their character, but what they choose not to do. Hit that like button if you've ever been surprised by someone showing mercy or restraint when they had every reason not to. In the comments, share a time when you chose compassion over vengeance, even when no one would have blamed you for choosing differently. What made you break the cycle? And did it change how you saw yourself afterward? The debriefing at Harrington's estate lasted 3 hours. Claire was meticulous, thorough, every detail documented, every decision analyzed. Edward Harrington himself joined via secure video link, his expression barely concealing his relief at the prototype's safe arrival. Exceptional work as always, Claire, he said, eyes flickering briefly to me. And Mr. Reeves, it seems your wife's assessment of your capabilities was not exaggerated. I glanced at Claire, catching a hint of pride in her otherwise professional demeanor. The quantum encryption project can now proceed on schedule, Harrington continued. Thanks to both of you. When the call ended, Claire's team dispersed. leaving us alone in the secure conference room. The silence between us felt weighted with 12 years of parallel lives, of truths half told and identities concealed. You disobeyed tactical protocol, Claire said finally, her voice neutral. Engaging Resnick directly wasn't part of the plan. Neither was letting him live, I acknowledged. Old habits are hard to break, some more than others. She studied me, head tilted slightly. Why did you spare him? I considered my answer carefully. This wasn't just about Resnick. Because I don't want to be that person anymore, I said simply. The one who eliminates problems permanently. The one who compartmentalizes everything, including his marriage. Claire's expression softened almost imperceptibly. She reached for the classified folder containing the operation records, closed it deliberately. Walk with me, she said. We left the main house in silence, crossing the manicured grounds as the sun began to set. Neither of us spoke until we reached a stone bench overlooking an ornamental lake. I used to come here to think, Claire said, sitting down, about operations, about us, about whether there was still an us to salvage. I remained standing, too restless for stillness. And what did you conclude? Claire looked up at me, her eyes reflecting the fading light. That I never really knew. Knew what? If I was in love with the real you, or just the version of you I'd constructed from fragments. She gestured, for me to sit beside her. The Marcus, who appeared for 72 hours in Dubai. The voice on encrypted calls, the carefully edited emails. I sat, leaving space between us. I've been asking myself the same question about you. And? She prompted. I think. I hesitated, searching for words. I think I fell in love with parts of you, the parts you allowed me to see. But those parts were real, weren't they? Just not complete. Claire nodded slowly. Yes, I never fabricated who I was, just omitted the rest. She turned to face me directly. When did you decide to leave the unit? 6 months ago, I admitted, after Moscow. It was a clean operation, textbook execution, but afterward, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sense of purpose, just emptiness. I know that feeling, Claire said quietly. I realized I was becoming someone I didn't want to be, I continued. Someone who saw people as either assets or threats. Someone who measured relationships in tactical value. And you wanted to come home. She finished for me. To the wife you thought was waiting. Yes, I acknowledged. I had this image of us starting over, building the life we talked about before. Everything got so complicated. Before I became more committed to the mission than to our marriage. Claire was silent for a moment, watching a heron land gracefully at the water's edge. I spent years being angry with you, she finally said, for choosing the operations over me, for not seeing who I really was, for treating me like a civilian who couldn't possibly understand the weight you carried. I never gave you the chance, I said, to understand, to be a real partner. No, you didn't. Her voice was matter of fact, not accusatory. But I did the same, didn't I? Once I joined the agency, I could have told you. Broken protocol, trusted you with my reality. Instead, I maintained my cover, kept you at arm's length. We both chose secrecy over honesty. The sun had nearly disappeared now, the grounds around us falling into shadow. In the distance, lights from the mansion cast long reflections across the lake. So where does that leave us? I asked. 2 former operatives who don't really know each other? Claire reached over, took my hand. Her touch was hesitant, unfamiliar, yet known like a safe house visited once years ago. Or 2 people with the chance to start over, she suggested. Without the covers, without the operational facades. I looked at our joined hands, her wedding ring catching the last of the light. Is that what you want? I don't know, she admitted. 12 years is a long time, Marcus. We're different people now. Yes, I agreed. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe the people we've become can build something more honest than the people we were. Claire's lips curved in a small, cautious smile. The operative in me says that's tactically unsound. Too many variables, unknown terrain. And the woman? I asked. She was quiet for a long moment, her thumb tracing small circles on the back of my hand. She thinks some missions are worth the risk. We sat in silence as darkness fell completely, the night air cooling around us. There was still so much unresolved, so many years to account for. But for the first time since I'd returned, hope felt like a tactical possibility rather than wishful thinking. "I'm leaving Harrington's employ," Claire said suddenly. "I gave notice last month." I looked at her, surprised. "Why?" "The same reason you left the unit. Diminishing returns. Tactical success without personal satisfaction." She released my hand, stood up. "I've been offered a position developing security protocols for humanitarian organizations in conflict zones, using my skills to protect people who help others, rather than corporate assets." I stood as well, recognizing the significance of her sharing this information voluntarily. No operational secrecy. No need-to-know basis. Just truth freely given. "When do you start?" I asked. 3 weeks. The position is based in Geneva, initially. She looked at me directly. "I haven't accepted yet." The implication hung in the air between us. A decision point. A moment that would determine our trajectory going forward. "What's holding you back?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. Claire's expression was open, vulnerable in a way I'd rarely seen. I wanted to know if I'd be going alone. 12 years of training had taught me to analyze every angle before committing, to identify threats, calculate risks, prepare contingencies. But standing there with Claire, I realized sometimes the most tactical decision was the simplest one. "Ask me," I said quietly. She took a deep breath. "Marcus Reeves, would you consider starting over with me? Not as operatives, or assets, or tactical partners, just as two people who once promised to build a life together." I stepped closer, bridging the careful distance we'd maintained. "Are you suggesting a joint operation, Claire Reeves?" "The most dangerous kind," she said, a ghost of a smile playing across her lips. "No covers, no extraction plan, no guaranteed outcome." I reached up, gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture from our early days, before missions and secrets had created such distance between us. "I accept the assignment," I said. She leaned forward then, her forehead resting against mine. Not quite an embrace, but the closest we'd been in years. A tentative reconnection. "We'll need new protocols," she murmured. "Full disclosure, regular check-ins, no more compartmentalization." "Agreed," I said, "though some habits will be hard to break." "We're adaptable," Claire replied. "It's what they trained us for." We walked back to the guest house together, not touching but in step with each other. The night air was cool, the path dimly lit by landscape lighting. Ahead, the guest house windows glowed warmly. "There's something I need to show you," Claire said as we entered. She led me to what I'd assumed was a closet door, but revealed itself to be an entrance to a small room. Inside was a desk, a computer, and walls covered with us. Photos of our wedding, postcards I'd sent from locations I could disclose, maps with small pins marking places we'd met over the years, a framed copy of our marriage certificate. "What is this?" I asked, stunned by the unexpected shrine to our relationship. "My personal mission file," Claire said softly. "Every operation has one. The complete record of intelligence gathered, decisions made, outcomes tracked." I moved closer to the wall, examining the timeline she'd created. 12 years of our relationship, documented with the same precision she applied to her security operations. "You kept all of this, even when you thought we might be over?" Claire nodded. "Some missions you can't bring yourself to abandon, even when the intelligence suggests you should." I turned to her, suddenly seeing with perfect clarity what had been before me all along, a woman who had loved me enough to wait, to hope, to keep faith, even when operational realities pushed us apart. Not the civilian wife I'd imagined. Something far more complex, far more resilient. "I'd like to add to this file," I said. "Together, this time. No more unilateral intelligence gathering." Claire smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I think that can be arranged." Later that night, we lay together in Claire's bed. Not making love that would come later, when the newness of our honesty had settled, but simply existing in the same space without pretense. Her head rested on my chest, my arm around her shoulders. "Tell me something true," she said softly. "Something you never put in your emails or said during our calls." I thought for a moment. In Kazakhstan, after the operation went bad, I spent 3 days in a safe house alone. There was this moment when I thought I might not make it out. And all I could think about was how I'd wasted so much time, how I'd chosen the mission over moments with you. Claire was silent, her hand resting over my heart. "Your turn," I said. She sighed. "When I accepted the position with Harrington, it wasn't just about the professional opportunity. Part of me hoped you'd notice the change, that you'd realize something significant had shifted and come looking for me, that it would force a confrontation we both had been avoiding." "And it worked," I observed. "Eventually," she agreed. "Though not quite as I'd imagined." We fell silent, the weight of our shared confession settling around us like a familiar blanket. Outside, the night was still, peaceful in a way that operational deployments rarely allowed us to appreciate. "We have a lot to learn about each other," I said finally. "Yes," Claire agreed. "But we have time now. Real time. Not just 72-hour windows between deployments." As she drifted toward sleep beside me, I realized that perhaps this was what coming home had always been meant to be. Not returning to something left behind, but arriving somewhere new, with someone who had been on their own journey in your absence. Claire and I had spent 12 years in the shadows, serving purposes greater than ourselves. We had lied and compartmentalized and hidden our truths, believing it was necessary for the mission. Now, we faced the greatest operational challenge of our lives: building a relationship without covers, without handlers, without exit strategies. It wouldn't be easy. Two people trained to conceal, learning to reveal. Two operatives accustomed to isolation, learning to connect. But as I held my wife, the real Claire, not the creation of my imagination, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years of covert operations. I felt unafraid of what came next. Because the most dangerous mission of all is to love someone without reservation, to trust when all your training screams against it, to believe in possibilities rather than threats. And for that mission, at least, we were equally matched. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is put down our defenses and truly see the person standing in front of us not as we imagined them to be, but as they actually are. Real connection happens in that vulnerable space between what we've lost and what we might still create together. Hit that like button if you've ever had to completely reimagine your relationship with someone important in your life. In the comments, tell me about a moment when you chose to start over with someone, to build something new from the ruins of old expectations. What made you take that risk? And looking back, was it worth it?